Recently, a controversy rocked the National Bilibid prisons, where the rights of the high-profile inmates violated when they were transferred from the National Bilibid prisons to the detention center of the National Bureau of Investigation since they were caught for certain violations. Several of them alleged drug lords, getting special treatment from some prison officials and personnel. Commission on Human Rights Chairperson Etta Rosales said there has to be a balance between the rights of the convicts and the collective rights of the Filipino people. Tonight we are joined by Chairperson Etta Rosales to explain their rights, that it must be respected without endangering the safety of a great majority of our people. Good evening, ma'am, and welcome to NewsLife.
Yeah, good evening, Kathy.
Ma'am, you visited the inmates of the NBI Detention Center. How would you assess the situation there?
Well, maaliwalas, as I said. No? When I went there, there were about 18 of them because the 19th was in the hospital. And I was allowed, I was the first visitor. I don't know if they had other visitors since then. But when I went there, it was very spacious. They had 2 rooms. One was even, air-conditioned, but I think they got rid of that. And they had a common bathroom. So, and then there was like a veranda. So they were in that veranda and they were just, everybody was just walking around. So, for all intents and purposes, it was very comfortable. It was cool. And when I asked them if they were, if they had food, morning, noon, and night, and they said, no, ma'am, no problem. Wala kaming problema sa pagkain, wala kaming problema sa facilities. Pero ang gusto lamang namin ay yung legal counsel at saka family visits. No? So, yun yung kanilang hinanaing.
Okay,
no?
So there is truth that the inmates were barred from receiving their lawyers and other visitors in the facility?
Yeah, I was their first visitor. So they had not yet been visited by their legal counsel and their the family, members of the family. And so they asked me, and I said, well, yes, it's a constitutional right for every inmate to at least be provided his or her right to legal counsel and visits from the family. No different from, ordinary inmates. However, there are several things that we have to take into account. And I told them that I think that the right to legal counsel and the right to family visits will be processed within a framework of seeking the balance, as you had mentioned a while ago, between these specific rights of the accused as against the larger rights of the Filipino people to security against heinous crimes that, for all intents and purposes, are actually a result of drug trafficking, which is a crime that was discovered inside the kubols of all these inmates, of maximum security. So that kind of balance will have to be first undertaken. And as I said, first of all, specifically, when you talk about specific rights to legal counsel and to family visits, those rights are also have corresponding responsibilities. In other words, the responsibility of these inmates to enjoy these rights and to make sure that such rights are not abused. However, if a crime is committed by any of these inmates, or these inmates are accused of having committed a crime, like drug trafficking, for instance, then there is already abuse in the enjoyment of these rights. And for that purpose, the government will have to take action and address the arrest of that crime, like drug trafficking, for instance. And in that regard, all activities that relate to the commission of that crime, like transport, communication, contact, travel, liaison, any kind of connection, all of these activities will have to be cut off and suspended. And I think this is exactly what the government is doing in regard to arresting the crime and making sure that the people are actually protected from the commission of this crime, especially when this was discovered after the blitzkrieg raids of December 15, 19, and 22.
Ma'am, speaking of the contrabands that were discovered at the National Bilibid prisons, what guarantee do we have that with their transfer that everything will be looked after from now on?
So there's no guarantee. What we will have to do, this is a whole process that will have to be undertaken. First and foremost, there has to be total isolation, total communication cut off from these people who were discovered to have actually been having all this contraband and all this granada and everything, no? So they have to be cut off and isolated from the rest of the crowd. And that is the reason why even the visits from lawyers and family relatives would have to be curtailed and suspended in the meantime.
Okay.
Understandably, no? Because you have to get rid, you have to cut off all communication. And once you are able to do that and you are able to isolate them, then you go into cleaning up the rest of the... Remember, you have... You know, there are 22,000 in the entire penitentiary, no, national penitentiary. And within the 22,000, 14,545 are in that maximum security. And it is within this maximum security where you were able to develop, they were able to develop a very complicated network of drug trafficking that had its connections to the outside world and marketed drugs in the outside world. Can you imagine that? My God. So if you do not cut that off, that allows for the proliferation of crimes. Because most of the crimes, you know, we make visits to the detention cells all over the Philippines, and I tell you, 50 to 60 to up to 80% of the crimes that we have actually documented are drug-related. That's how grave and that's how penetrated, you know, the crimes are with respect to the use of illegal drugs.
Yes, ma'am. Earlier you mentioned that for that purpose of really curtailing the whole drug trafficking problem, we have to cut the communication ties of these inmates from the outside world. But do they fully understand why they are being barred from seeing their legal counsels and families at the moment?
Well, of course, even if they do understand, they would still prefer to have their legal counsels. You know, they'd still assert for that. When I was telling them, I said, my God, you're in the limelight. You're all over the place. You're all over the diario. No, ma'am, it's not true. Are you sure? You had nothing at all to do with drug trafficking? You mean everything that came out in the newspapers were actually a set of lies? Well, hindi naman ganun, kanilang ganun. Meron din naman, pero hindi naman ganun kagrabe. Kaya, alam naman nila. Diba? Alam nila yan. But of course, they will forever try to get their lawyers. But, you know, in a situation where hindi mo alam kung ano nangyayari, and I know some of their lawyers, like, what's his name? Freddie or Ferdy, either Freddie or Ferdy, pangalan niya? Palafox. Palafox. Ba? Hindi. I forget his name, but I know
one of the lawyers.
One of the lawyers. Kilala ko siya. And I would appeal to them to at least use, you know, their wisdom as lawyers in trying to protect the people against the crimes that are being committed, no? That have actually been committed. They can provide legal advice to this, you know, these inmates, but at least they should also see the responsibility in making sure that the Filipino people are protected against these crimes.
Ma'am, in your opinion, how should the government deal with or intensify its campaign further in protecting our people against the drug menace?
Well, one thing, in reviewing this whole Bucor situation, we have to implement a new law that has just been passed. No, this is the Republic Act 10575. This is strengthening and reinforcing the Bureau of Corrections Act of 2013. They have just finished adopting the IRR. Katatapos-tapos niyan last month. And this is way overdue. Do you know that the original law, is 1905? Can you imagine? Then from that 1905 law, there was a 1935 law that provided for the establishment of the Bucor. And then after that, there was this manual that they had set up, that they put up. So, ngayon pa lamang sila naglalabas ng isang batas in order to correct and rectify yung kamalian at saka yung pagiging obsolete nitong mga batas na ito. So that law, it's a good law, I've read it, has to be fully implemented. The IRR is finished, but you cannot implement it by the government itself. No, you need civil society groups, you need the schools, you need the church, you need the communities, you need media, no, to be able to push for this. You need watchdogs and a monitoring system. And the government has to have more resolve. No, kuminsan ang gobyerno, nambi-pambi, wishy-washy, neither here nor there. Kuminsan ganyan na, sige, okay, tapos hindi siya resolbado. Dapat si gobyerno, resolbado siya. Ipatupad niya ito sapagkat ang krimen, the crime that has been committed, can never be underestimated. And to me, what the DOJ has done through the help of Bucor, without Bucor, the NBI and the SAF and the PIDEA and the DOJ would never have been able to do the operations. No? It was the Bucor itself, the people within, that planned the whole thing. So with them and the collaboration of all of this, nagawa ito. And for the first time, this is radical. Kasi yung mga earlier assaults and then raids, malabo yun, napaka-palliatives lang. Pero this time, ang ganda nung ginawa ng DOJ with the help of all of this, PIDEA, Bucor and company. Tingin ko, media and everybody else must give out all support para sa ganon, we fully implement the law and with the civil society groups, the church, I'm sure will be willing. There's no reason why we cannot isolate. Iilan lang naman itong mga ito mayayaman na ginagamit ang pera nila in order to poison, and corrupt the people within because they receive very low pay. Then the government has to improve on the salaries of the Bucor people. Dapat ma-improve ang standards. Then there has to be more training and capacitate them. Ang liit-liit ng training. Do you know that they only get half the salary of what BJMP people get? Oo, kung ano yung jail 1, yung inspector nila, salary grade 22, halimbawa yung si BJMP. Salary grade 11 lang itong isa. Ganon kalaki ang diferensya.
We sincerely hope, ma'am, that appropriate actions can be taken so that the law can be properly implemented so that the Filipino people will be able to enjoy peace and safety in the country. Thank you very much, ma'am. That's Chairperson Etta Rosales of the Commission on Human Rights. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us here in NewsLife.
Thank you.